Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Belly to Belly. We're here talking with great friend Craig Patterson from Exabeam. How are you, Craig?
Excellent, my man. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this conversation because we're talking about having more capable, more competent partners. So, what you're going to be speaking a couple times at Catalyst next week, the Partnership Leaders event, and one of your topics is this exact topic, the topic of partner competency. What is so important about this? Why is it compelling?
Yeah, so it's a topic I'm very passionate about. So I think it's one that more people really need to understand. So a couple key points I'd throw at you, Bill. Number one, when I think about the ecosystem in general, it really is the operating model for scale. And so as companies that are in the tech space or in cybersecurity, the ones that truly embrace the ecosystem play, the strategy, those are the ones that really have the opportunity to scale. And so as you look at that, some of these ecosystems are quite large. I have an ecosystem of over 3,000 partners around the globe. And so, it's not a problem state for me to say, oh, Craig, you need to go recruit more partners. I've got more partners than I know what to do with, right? It's more about how do I actually drive better outcomes? Well, my thesis there is you want to focus in on the enablement side. You really get partners trained and enabled because that'll actually drive a higher competency level. And of course, higher competency level can then start to predict more favorable outcomes. So there's a lot there probably to unpack and talk about, but to me, it's less about more partners. The unlock is not more partners, it's actually having more capable partners.
So yeah, let's talk about kind of as you see that process of creating competency or capability. How do you break that down in terms of what are the areas to focus on?
Yeah, so first off, I would say we're in private equity, right? And so there's certain outcomes my company's looking to achieve, right? So you think about what are those desired outcomes. Of course, it's the basics, right? We want to sell more, we want to have higher bookings, want to raise our pipeline and our conversions. But there's other outcomes too. You start to break it down and what is the time in which it takes a partner for their first deal? Okay, so time to first deal. How can I accelerate through our sales cycles faster? So, right, so we call it, speed and velocity. So how do I convert more? How do I move through sales cycles faster? How do I get that first time to the first deal shorter? And so, those are some of the outcomes we were looking to achieve here. And so when we started thinking about those problems and how do we solve those and how do we create the traction around those positive outcomes, our thesis all came back to this notion of enablement, right? So for us to drive those outcomes, well, the way we do that is we make partners smarter. And so when you think about that notion is, okay, well, how do I actually raise the competency level? And so then you take a step back and you look to say, well, how is enablement really set up today? Well, what you look at across most vendors today, it's this problem where, we require partners to log on to these LMS platforms. We say, hey, go through this training, at the end of that training, take that quiz and Bill, guess what? You're going to be smarter. You're going to be better at, really positioning our services. And the reality is that's not true because the partners do exactly what you and I do, Bill. And that's if we get in those situations, well, we try to fast forward, right, to that LMS platform to get to the end. And if they have that blocked, well, then we just let it play in the background with the sound muted, right?
We don't do that.
And then we get to the end, it's like it pops open the quiz and it's like, okay, well, I didn't really listen to the content, so I guess I better probably open up my friend ChatGPT or any of the AI models, and then I plug in the question and it answers it. So that's the reality in terms of how most of these enablement systems are built today. None of them actually do anything in terms of raising the competency level. And so, that's a problem we sort of started to look at, became very passionate about and really ran at. And so what we did there was we really looked at, how do we solve this particular problem? And so we started looking at just the way in which people learn.
Mm.
And so we started to kind of rethink that learning journey. And so the learning journey, the certification process, how you add levels of support in for partners became the genesis for our new platform, which we call Sherpa. And so what we did, Bill, is we built, I think, the most innovative, forward-thinking, aggressive, market-leading partner enablement system that exists today that really goes at the problem of actually, making partners smarter, higher competency level. Of course, all that ties back to the outcomes we're looking to achieve. And so with Sherpa, what we have now is we have an AI-powered tool that does three main use cases. Use case number one, always on virtual channel account manager. So, think of it as, your tool for your partners around the globe. Again, I've got 3,000 partners all over the globe speaking in tons of different languages. Like, how can I interact with those partners in a way to help them get the level of support they need, answer their questions, and provide a really good experience. And so that's really what use case number one is, the ability for partners to ask questions. How do I position Exabeam? Talk to me about the value proposition of Exabeam. Talk to me about the ICP of Exabeam. Share the relevant details about our award-winning Apex partner program. Things like that. Just get general questions answered. Of course, they can ask in their local language. So that's use case number one. And oh, by the way, it integrates in Teams and Slack, and then they can get to it in our portal. Make sense? Use case one?
Perfect.
Okay, so we're really excited about that. By the way, I have over 1,000 partners now interacting in our tool at any given moment. And the beautiful thing around that, Bill, is you can start to see the common themes in terms of what partners are asking. If I start to see a common question around this particular topic, well, guess what? And then I can lean in, right? And I can start to provide even more enablement, right, around that particular topic. And so the second use case is really our certification. And so the way we've gone about this is it's a dynamic learning path. And so imagine a world, you pop open a portal and there's a bunch of different topics that are sort of shown in this dynamic fashion. And you say, you know what? I'm really interested about this topic. And so you double click into that, and then you go on this journey. You learn more about it, and then it asks you to practice putting that topic into practice. So how do I take the conceptual academic lesson and then actually putting it into a practical lesson? And so it's like, Bill, can you go ahead and give this pitch on this topic that you just learned about? And so then you record yourself, given the pitch on that particular topic. You upload it into the model, and it comes back to say, Bill, you did an excellent job, around this particular topic. But because this is a healthcare customer, you might want to say it this way next time because it's going to resonate a little bit better with a healthcare company. And so it's this whole premise of this dynamic journey. You click into what you like, and then it makes you better. And then the third use case, which, I think we might be the only company out here doing this today, and that is a virtual coach. So imagine, Bill, you're the partner having a conversation with the customer. You're talking about all the wonderful things that Exabeam does, and that customer starts to ask you questions or give you objections. Well, in the background, this tool is starting to help you. Hey, they just gave this objection. Talk to them about this value proposition or this use case, or this recent update we've made to our technology. So those are the three use cases we've developed. We've got a whole roadmap of innovation around this. And again, it's all focused on the one thing we opened up with. How do we make our partners better so they're more successful?
The third module actually made me think of Cyrano de Bergerac, right? The guy that stayed behind the bush, giving the other guy advice on how to talk to a woman. But
exactly.
So with the one of the things that you mentioned off the top was the time to first deal being an important metric. how do you see Sherpa impacting that? Are there some sort of leading indicators that are giving you a sense that that you're having a good impact there?
I mean, we have a lot of goodness there. I mean, so general indicators, we just got awarded by a CRN, we swept all categories in AI security. One of them was around just overall satisfaction. So partners are generally very satisfied with our overall program. Of course, enablement's a big piece of that, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, you look at our Voice of the Partner survey, which we measure ourselves. We're seeing all of our scores continue to rise. The biggest one being our overall satisfaction is roughly around 85% of our channel ecosystem. So generally speaking, the majority of our ecosystem is quite pleased. But the things that I get excited about are, can we actually impact those outcomes that are really important to our private equity group? And so, one of the things we look at are conversion rates. And so what we're seeing is our overall conversion rates are growing. They're getting better quarter over quarter. In fact, we've seen about a 60% increase in our overall conversion rates.
Wow.
And so, I'd like to believe one of the major reasons for that success, obviously, is partners are getting smarter. And so we look at that. And then, of course, like the time to first deal, we're tracking all these things to really understand what's working and what's not. So the quick answer is yes, we're seeing a lot of really positive growth across our KPIs.
It sounds like, I guess the metaphor for me anyway would be sort of better at bats. You're getting as you said, the conversion rate is higher, so there's better competency with each transaction. It sounds like
100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Exabeam, and you want just so our audience has a better sense of what you do. Do you want to share a little bit about it? Yeah.
No, it's exciting time to be here at Exabeam. We've historically been very focused around the security operations space. So Gartner, 6-time Magic Quadrant leader in the SIEM space, which is security incident events management. It's really the brains, right, in terms of how the security operations teams operate, right? And so it's the software that drives the security posture for companies. That's what we've been really focused on, which is exciting. But what's even more exciting is in terms of where we're going. And so we've built some unbelievable telemetry in terms of how you monitor agentic AI. So you think about all the things that are happening out there around the world. Every company, every employee at every company is trying to get efficiency gains, right? And so they're building their own AI agents. They're introducing new workflows, trying to make their life easier. But as this stuff is unfolding, what you're seeing is it's starting to cause harm in these organizations, like the recent Hugging Face breach, OpenAI. And so, Gartner even came out and said recently by 2028, 25% of all security breaches will directly tie back to agentic AI. Oof. And so we've essentially built the telemetry in terms of how we can monitor the behavior of AI so we can see when it starts to go adrift. So drift is when it starts to go rogue, does bad things. And so we've set a new category called agentic behavior analytics, which is looking at, agents doing, behavior in an organization.
Gotcha. Wow, this is great stuff. Well, I can't wait to see you next week at the Partnership Leaders Catalyst event in New York. I'm going to come to both your talks. I can't wait to hear about it. And thank you for taking the time today.
No, thanks for having me. Very excited. By the way, for any listeners, if you're out there at Catalyst, come find myself and Bill. Bill's doing big things out there in the industry too. So come see us. Love to chat with you all.